Okay, so there is nothing that is toxic, universally toxic, in the food supply, in FDA approved fruits and vegetables, if they need to be, in processed foods. There's nothing toxic in that. There's nothing toxic in the prescription drugs. There's nothing toxic in chemotherapy. There's nothing toxic with Monsanto. There's nothing toxic with glyphosate. There's nothing toxic in GMO. There's nothing toxic in anything that is FDA approved, or with biotech. There's nothing toxic in anything that is approved by biotech. Okay? So then what makes it toxic or pollution or pollutant or toxin? It's based upon the balance of your body. Okay? So how is it that a tall guy, 6 feet, 7 feet tall, big boned, can withstand 40 rounds of chemotherapy and still live and look relatively amazing? Okay? And a guy that is, or a girl that is slight and that is same age, but not a lot of minerals in the body. You can see that there, one is like a white dude with lots of bone structure, and another is an Asian dude with very slight structure. But the one that's the Asian dude who has a slight structure is looking very aged from the rounds, the 12 rounds of chemotherapy, while the white dude withstood 40 rounds of chemotherapy and looks basically about his age. How does that happen? Oh, it's the biochemistry. It's what you bring to the table. It's the weaknesses, generationally and even current. So when somebody, when somebody is dealing with gray hair in their 30s, guess what? They already have imbalances that the body is stripping the hair of the minerals to keep the vital organs going. And they may have a specific allergy, they may have specific weaknesses that then they go and discriminate against certain foods, or they have a reaction to certain drugs. Okay? But when you think about it, there is nothing poisonous, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to react fine to the food, to the drug, to the specific remedy. Okay? So Monsanto, all they do is figure out how to manipulate the plants to get a specific outcome so they don't have mass destruction of crops because of pestilence. And then they do test enough to see, is it safe enough for the general population? Okay? And they do enough tests, say, okay, it's fine. But this whole thing with that lawsuit, as far as Roundup, okay, and the lymphoma, non-Hodgkin or Hodgkin lymphoma, is that we have people who have already been afflicted with viruses that have weak bodies, and then they are saying that, okay, so you have viruses and you have imbalances in your minerals. So anytime you're exposed to a condensed amount of minerals, regardless of what it is, it's going to cause more imbalances, more weaknesses. And then, yeah, people who have all the different viruses in their body that make up lymphoma will then see different characteristics that look like lymphoma. Okay, and then you have the biases that are being inserted to then say correlation equals causation. And then it gets run by a jury that has that same bias. Yeah, you're going to have a jury award somebody $6 million, $80 million, whatever dollars. But it's really not. But here's the thing. I mean, Monsanto and all these different corporations, they already know there's going to be a weak population, a segment of the weak population. Because guess what? I have used conventional vegetables that have Roundup and glyphosate with the chili juice. All it is just minerals and maybe some bacteria, maybe some fatty acid, maybe some amino acids, maybe some pro-hormones. And guess what? I don't have lymphoma. So why is it I can eat conventional vegetables and eat wheat and eat nightshades and eat all this stuff that people are like, oh my God, it's like, it's like kryptonite to them. Oh, because they brought to the table weaknesses. So when you are demonizing Monsanto and demonizing processed food and demonizing coffee and demonizing chemotherapy and you're demonizing cannabis, yes, it's because you are coming from a weak point of view, a weak body. Okay. And so, I know that when the body needs to heal, it needs the right chemistry. So I'm demonizing it from the perspective of life, yes. And someone can say the same thing, like, oh, I don't want to die from the chemotherapy. But it's a matter of, you wouldn't need chemotherapy if you had a well-balanced body. You wouldn't need cannabis if you had a well-balanced body. You wouldn't need to stay away from any of these things if you had a well-balanced body. Okay, my body's well-balanced, and yeah, I could be exposed to all this stuff, not as it being a reaction to, but I can be exposed to all this stuff within balance, and it's not going to affect me. But how do I do it within balance? Oh, they put so much in it. How do you know? Well, because I already control my own internal universe. I know how to control all of the minerals, the prohormones, the fatty acids and amino acids in my body. So that way, when I am exposed to Wi-Fi or exposed to smart meters or exposed to any kind of difference in environment, my body can adapt to it. But, there are people that don't know how to adapt. They can't adapt. And so then they demonize the chemotherapy and the cannabis. And the reason why they demonize it is because they come from a weak body. I demonize it because I come from a strong body and I don't even need the cannabis or the chemotherapy. So it doesn't even make sense to me. But yeah, if you have to take a cannabis or a chemo or a detox or a prescription drug, it's because you already come from a weakness. If you have to utilize elderberry syrup and colloidal silver and turmeric and spices and extracts and essential oils, and you are getting sick every season, then yeah, you're going to be demonizing a bunch of stuff, blaming. Okay. So yeah, so somebody was on my Facebook asking, why it is their hair was going gray. And then I was giving them the whole reasoning why it is that the body is breaking down even at age 30. Because yeah, there are people that go gray very early on in life. I know people in my world that have gray hair early on in life. Or maybe one patch of their head has grayness there, or white, okay, or white hair. And then I know people that have triggered menopause very early on in life, okay? And it's really the manifestation of an imbalance. And so when you have malabsorption, which is basically the root of the aging process, is malabsorption. The body is not able to absorb the nutrients and break it down to where the body can actually derive benefit. And so then they get symptoms or pain. And then it's like biochemical triage. The body then has to go steal from the bones and steal from the hair, skin, and nails to keep the vital organs going in the degradation process. And that's the weak body manifesting itself. And why you see people go gray early on in life, or why you see people trigger with major hormonal imbalances early on in life. The body's going through a biochemical triage, trying to figure out how to balance itself out, and then people self-medicate, or they go get prescription drugs. So with the J juice, with the pain sequence and the healing process, it's still biochemical triage, but now we're not stealing from the bones and the hair, skin, and nails. We're actually bringing in the minerals and the nutrients and the fatty acids and the amino acids in the water and the electrolytes, and we're actually filling the reserves so you don't have to cannibalize yourself, because that's what the aging process is. It's the body cannibalizing itself. Okay, that's what the aging process is. Watch people. I mean, I hear my mom's voice. She sounds like she did when she was 40. Her voice sounds the same. Over the phone, her voice sounds the same. But then you look at her skin and your hair, and you know that she's aging. But you couldn't tell by the voice. And I told her that the other day. I said, Mom, you sound like you did when you were 40, back when we were kids, because she didn't have us until she was in her late 30s and early 40s. Okay, so I've always known my mom to have the same voice. But then when I see her, it actually startled me when I first saw her a couple of years ago, after a while of not seeing her. Okay, so when the body's trying to keep your vital organs going, it's going to steal from the hair, skin, and nails. And then you see the saggy skin, you see the collagen being lost, you see the bone loss, you know, osteoporosis. Okay? So with the J juice, you're actually refilling the reserves so you don't have to steal from Peter PayPal or steal from other parts of your body to keep the vital organs going. And then when you are depleted of those reserves, when there's no more reserves left, and you have more of a weakness in your vital organs, in your heart, in your brain, in your lungs, and your kidneys, that's when people die from strokes, because they are basically mineral depleted. Okay, so all Monsanto is just minerals and bacteria. But that's really what is made up of our society, and what your body is made up of is minerals, bacteria, and acid. And hormones. That's it. When you break everything down, it's really to an elemental state and bacteria. So then there's really nothing poisonous in our society as far as that's a food, as well as FDA approved, as well as biotech. Now it's a matter of what kind of device are you bringing to the table to cause you to have a fear of the chemtrails, of 5G, of, you know, chemotherapy and cannabis and all these different drugs and things. Well, you should have a fear because you have a weak ass body. Okay? You should be afraid of meat because you have a weak body. Just because you stayed away from meat your whole life doesn't mean it's doing you any favors. If anything, you need a hamburger. You need a cheeseburger. You need a slab of prime rib, because it'll bring everything back to normal. And yeah, you'll have to go through an upset of homeostasis. You'll have to go through the biochemical triage. The body's now finally getting the data that it needs. Okay, I mean, yeah, some people are going to be like a Ruth Ginsburg, where they're going to be 95 years old, but they're going to look like the Crypt Keeper, the Walking Dead. So it really isn't a milestone that you live to be 102 when you are basically the Walking Dead. And then it'll just be a matter of, you know, which way the wind blows of when you actually die. Will that extra added exercise that you did, or that surprise that somebody did for you during Halloween, now cause you to then go over the edge? But that's, I mean, so I'm hoping that, I don't know, I'm not gonna hoping, you know, people will live to be 100, 102, 103, and then they pass away, or 105 or 100, but they're going to look like a shell of themselves. And that really, you know, is do you really want to have that kind of quality of life? So there really is nothing poisonous. It's just a matter of what kind of imbalances are you working with. And how do you balance out your body? You have to understand what pain is, what symptoms are, and then you're done with the right mentality, the right chemistry, and then the correct perceived outcome. Do you think people should live indefinitely, or do you think people should die at some point? Those are the three main things to then cause you to have then, because people are consistent. I mean, either say they want to live, but they are very consistent that they do want to die. Okay, they're all their actions, you know, because people say, you know, that's the thing, is like, it's not what people say when you think about it, it's what people do. People can pay a bunch of lip service, and I even get fooled by some people that are on the J juice world. Oh yeah, I'm doing the J juice, I'm well balanced, and then they still do their drugs, which, okay, fine. They don't, it's not like prescription drugs they do like ayahuasca, and they smoke a lot of pot when they really don't need to, and then they are very critical of how and which I roll this out. And I mean, I'm going into like a bit of a tangent here, but they have activists. They're demonizing certain things. Okay, they're still anti-vax, or that they still play with their chakras, and they want people to mitigate pain. Some people are not very obvious in their misalignment of their thought process. But as soon as what I realize, as soon as when somebody, you'll know their misalignment with the J, where they don't understand, is when you go through a healing process and they give you a remedy. They try to find a remedy for you. They don't say, hey, you're going through a healing process, you're supposed to do it. No, they find a way, a remedy. They're like, oh no, you can do a healing chakra, and you can manipulate your organs, or do breathing exercises, and that'll stop the pain. Or you can do all these different crystals and whatever. And so, you know, they don't get the J juice. So yeah, I'm doing J juice, but I don't want to feel the pain. So I'm gonna do all these things to stop the pain. Okay. So it can be very, very, very difficult to really figure out who is really aligned with the life trajectory. And it's really what they say. And you almost have to trap them into some of these questions. Okay. And so the only way that I know a person is really, truly well balanced is to stay on the J juice and they get off the activism. They're not anti-vax, they're not pro-vax. They're just like, hey, you know, when people have weak bodies, they're going to have some layer of protection. There's a place for the vaccines. There's a place for prescription drugs. For those that have imbalances in their hormones and they don't know how to balance it out themselves and they're suffering, then yeah, you go see a doctor. Okay. So there's a place for the FDA, there's a place for the CDC, there's a place for vaccines, there's a place for biotech, there's a place for Monsanto. Now, how are you going to manage your balance or imbalance universe to then have it be aligned with your belief system? Okay, so there's nothing universally toxic in anything really that's FDA approved in our food supply. Because yeah, I mean, even though I peed a lot, I ate a bunch of hamburger helper, but then I was also exposed to a virus this weekend because I went to somebody's house that had the flu virus. Okay, but my body was able to adapt to whatever. I mean, the system uses duck feathers. They use hair as a conditioner. They use certain, things in the animals, like, I don't know, they use animal secretions to flavor the food. Big freaking whoop. People eat animals all the time. People eat duck, people eat deer, people eat, eggs, they eat chickens. They eat beef, they eat lamb. I mean, you look at what's in your house, and animals had to die. But then you look at, the back in the caveman days, animals had to die back then too to feed the caveman. And it was pretty brutal back then. That's why I wrote that post about, we wouldn't have 7 billion cavemen on this planet because Mother Nature would not allow 7 billion cavemen to commune together. The reason why we have 7 billion people on this planet is because of modern medicine and vaccines. That's the reason. And we've compartmentalized the things that are more barbaric to some. I do not want to see an animal die, but I know they do because I see the meat in the market. I see fish in the markets. Fish had to go and deal with that treacherous death of being on the hook and being pulled in the fight. I mean, it's like we know that these things happen. Now, are there more humane ways to die? Yeah, I'm sure there is. It's not good to beat up an animal before it dies, let it suffer like that. It should be a really quick, clean death. Nothing to allow suffering. But sometimes it happens out there. But then, hey, when a caveman goes and hunts their game, their woolly mammoth, they hunt them and stalk them and throw arrows in them, and the animal suffers. Or when they're falling down a cliff, the caveman or the Indians or whoever goes and then influences the herd to go over a cliff. And they're at the bottom of the cliff waiting for all the animals that have died going over the cliff. I mean, feeding, the circle of life isn't beautiful. But in our society, we have been so spoiled into not having to see that side of life, that it's all like I'm here in Ohio and we have like Sugardale, whatever, and they kill pigs. I would not want to work in a meat factory. I would not want to work in a butcher shop. I don't even want to work in the healthcare industry, just seeing all the blood. I mean, I was a candy striper when I was a kid, and that was enough. Okay? So some of us have a stomach for that. Some of us don't. Some of us are hunters and gatherers and fishermen, and I can fish, but I won't put the worm on the hook because I'm like, oh my God, that poor worm. And then that poor fish. So people who sport fish, and catch and release, that's trauma to the fish. Okay, so when someone's like, oh, an activist against the testing for the monkeys testing, the animal testing, and human testing, well, they're using face creams, they're fishing, they live in a modern society where even this has to go through an experimentation process to make sure that this is safe. Even making this is safe for humans to be around. Okay? So why I got off on this tangent is because, you know, a lot of hypocrisy, but whatever. I mean, I don't know. But I mean, but there's nothing universally toxic in our society. There really isn't anything universally toxic. Okay? It's just a matter of what you bring to the table and then how you manage it and then what's your belief system. And we have the ability now in our society to live indefinitely. We don't have to die like the caveman. We are so spoiled that we have our food supply, how it actually ends up in the grocery store, completely shoved off in a factory with no windows where you can see the actual process and traumatized. Okay? I mean, I can't even watch even in a fresh fish market where they actually take the fresh fish and then hit it. You know, it's hard to watch. But we know that for us to eat, it has to happen. Okay, it's hard to watch, you know, nature do its thing when you're watching a big great white shark throw a seal in the air and catch it in its mouth. I mean, that's difficult too. You feel bad for the seal, but you know, it's a circle of life. Okay, so if we could just understand there's a place for it all and not demonize the meat industry, not demonize anything, there's a place for it all. And then you just have to get your body well balanced and get off the activist train and exemplify a well-balanced human, which means that, you know, there's a place for everything. People who are imbalanced, are suffering, got to go to the doctor. They got to get their chemotherapy. They got to get their cannabis. I get it. They got to get their prescription drugs. They got to get their vaccines. And that's fine. Now, if you want to actually exemplify a well-balanced human, you do the J juice. You stay with it. You deal with the healing and the pain. And then in 5 and 10 years, the same people are around you. And some of them are young, so they'll be around in 5 or 10 years. And you look exactly the same, and you reversed all of your issues, and you looked really old at one point, and now you look like you're 30. That will make a believer out of them because they see the specific measurable results. Okay? It's not what you pay your lip service to. It's not the activism that you do. It's actually you understand that the cell regeneration and telomere lengthening, because that's what it comes down to. It's not even about age anymore. It's what you look like, how you behave, and are you consistent and well balanced, and you're not degrading with everybody else. That's the specific measurable result. That's why it's going to take a while for me to really get this rolled out and have people understand, because I'm 45, and yeah, people say, yeah, you look like you're 19, but says, oh yeah, she's Asian, she can carry her. Asians have great skin, and believe me, if you saw pictures from like 5 or 6 years ago, you'd be like, damn. But then people can do diets and do, like, you know, esthetician stuff and whatever, and plastic surgery and look young. But I mean, believe me, I don't live that lifestyle, plastic surgery. Okay, but it's going to take at least 5 or 10 years for people to actually, for this to gain traction. Because even plastic surgery is not going to make you look young. Because at some point, I'm seeing girls my age doing plastic surgery, and you can tell they're doing plastic surgery. You can tell. Plastic surgery only hides so much. And then it's like, it's obvious. Oh, wow, you got some work done. It looks great. You look beautiful. But then you take off all their makeup. You're like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? Makeup and plastic surgery hides the actual degradation of the body. And so don't be fooled by what you see on Facebook. All, you know, the filters and the makeup and the plastic surgery and the working out, that's all a perception that they're selling you to have you buy their products, their exercise regimes, their MLMs. And so that's why you got to do the J juice and at least show your friends and family, because they're the ones that know you best. It's not about the strangers. Strangers, who cares? The strangers want to do my J juice and they see what I like, great. But really, if you're trying to prove something to somebody, prove it to your friends and family that know you best. And it's going to take time, and you have to be consistent and not mischaracterize J juice and bitch about the healing process, because it's not fun. Pain is not fun, but it's necessary, especially if you're trying to upgrade your body in the right, correct way. So for those that really truly want to be aligned in your body, mind, and spirit, you got to do the J juice. You got to. And if not, then all you're doing is just paying lip service to something that you really don't believe in. You have a misalignment in your body, mind, and spirit. And then you're demonizing, and then you're basically projecting your own imbalances onto others. When you demonize Monsanto, when you demonize vaccines, when you demonize anything, the FDA, the CDC, when you demonize anyone or anything, you're actually working from that imbalance. And yeah, you're going to end up like everybody else on a death trajectory. You're end up like grandma. Eventually you end up in a hospice, and then you're done. And then there goes the whole point of your activism. You have no return on that investment. You wasted your minerals on people who don't give a crap about you. So better to refill your mineral reserves and deal with people who actually give a crap about you than deal with people who don't care about you. Because the activist world, they don't really care about each other. Because as soon as you leave that activist world, they can give two shits about you. Okay? So anyways, yeah, once you're dead, you're dead. Oh, there's another casualty. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.